up after the eclipse. Devil Comet, pink moon, also visible in April. While the famed Devil Comet may be visible during the solar eclipse itself, astronomers say that the celestial body will best be sighted on April 21st. That's the day that the comet, officially known as 12P Pons Brooks, will make its closest approach to the sun in its 71-year orbit of the massive star. The Devil Comet, which earned its demonic nickname from its distinctive tail that resembles horns, is typically visible to only those with the strongest of telescopes. But on the day it's closest to the sun, its brightness should increase so much that it will become visible to the naked eye. Now, why does this tie in? This comet comes into view in the earth the night before Passover begins. The night before Passover begins, this comet that only comes around once every 71 years comes into view the night before Passover. Now, you have that, right? You have what happened in Damascus, right? Which we had been warning about that. Now, to understand this even more, because we're going to get to the articles of what actually happened, we have to build up to this, what Iran tried to do to Israel over the weekend, and now the U.S. is on such high alert from it. And things happen today even in the U.S., close to my home even, that we're going to talk about in a moment. But we have to go back to 1979, and we're going to go back to 1979 a couple of times for various reasons in this. But the last eclipse that NASA recorded in the 20th century took place in 1979. This eclipse was visible in the Pacific Northwest and parts of Idaho and the Dakotas, but the path of totality mostly passed through Canada. That was 45 years ago. 45, right? Now, keep that number in mind, 45, because we had Isaiah 45, right? Having to do with Cyrus, linked to the 45th presidency. So just keep that in mind. But what was going on in 1979, 45 years ago, that we need to take note of? Pink Floyd, and I'm not a fan of Pink Floyd, but I'm telling you, this is very interesting what happened. Pink Floyd released The Wall. Okay? They released The Wall. I guess it was a record or a song within the record, but it was called The Wall. It was a record. Okay. Russia, which was the USSR back then, invades Afghanistan. So Russia invaded another nation. Okay. Number 3, 63 Americans are taken hostage in the American embassy in Tehran. Tehran is the capital of Iran. So 45 years ago, this happens. The year a full solar eclipse takes place, these 3 things happen. Now, if we go 45 years later, something very interesting, a pattern emerges, right? So we have in 1979, an eclipse year, the wall, Russia invades another nation, and embassy in Iran is involved in an attack. Okay. 45 years later, what's going on? We have a full solar eclipse this year, right? We just had it April 8th. What is going on? The wall at the southern border is a major issue. Building the wall, immigration, the soft invasion coming across our border. Okay, 1. 2, Russia is fighting with Ukraine and invaded Ukraine. Okay, check. Russia invades another nation. 3, the Iranian consulate next to the embassy in Damascus is attacked. So we have the Iranian embassy involved in some sort of attack. These 2 years mirror each other. And this is by no mistake. This is prophetic in nature. And it is 45 years apart, nonetheless. Now, if we go to April 12th, 2024, which is right before what Iran did over the weekend happened, something happens in Europe that has to do with all of this. Something major happened in Europe. Okay? The end of Schengen and the start of the EU revolt. What does yesterday's historic migration vote mean? Okay, so this is the headline. The EU yesterday voted to pass a landmark migration control pact, which the bloc's leaders have said will let them regain control of its borders and crack down economic immigration. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said it was a historic, indispensable step, which represented solidarity among European states. This historic immigration bill to take back their borders in Europe is not only passed in this window, right, this 39-day window, but it's passed in the block of time between the eclipse and Passover. It is passed on the heels of what Iran did over the weekend. So, and it not only is that important, but it makes a mockery of the leadership of the United States of America, because Europe is getting how important borders are now. Europe is getting how important it is to control their borders. Europe is waking up, right? While we've got a sleepy old man and his cohorts and his shadow governments and everything else in a fog. So on the heels of what Iran is about to do, the EU passes this historic migration control pact to take back its borders, which puts more pressure on Congress and the leadership of the United States of America, because in some ways it makes them look like fools. It makes them look like fools that Europe is getting this, that Europe was able to come together for this, that Europe saw the writing on the wall in the Middle East and decided to come together and act. Okay. Now, we have this article from CNN. This is Friday, April 12th. This starts to break. U.S. expects Iran to carry out direct attack on Israel, sources say, as Biden warns don't. Oh, yes, of course, Joe Biden saying don't is really going to stop the madmen that are running Iran right now. That is just going to, that's how you deal with madmen. You just say don't and they listen. That was the warning the U.S. gave. That was it. Just don't. The U.S. expects that Iran will carry out strikes against multiple targets inside Israel in the coming days and is prepared to help intercept any weapons launched at its ally, sources tell CNN, as the Biden administration is on high alert for what could be the eruption of a significantly volatile and unpredictable period in the Middle East. Now, on April 12th, I wrote in this, because remember, I started writing this on the 11th. On the 12th, I wrote, the Abraham Accords will have the most pressure applied to them in this time to break. Okay, this is the time. The Abraham Accords this season are going to have the most pressure applied to them to break. Now, we're going to see something very interesting happening with that in this, but I want to in verses 6 through 19, because this talks about the covenant. To understand what's happening here, we have to understand the covenant that God made with Abraham. And so Genesis 15, verses 6 through 19, talks about this. And it says, then Abram, because God had not changed his name to Abraham yet, believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land as an inheritance. But Abram said, Lord God, by what proof will I know that I will inherit it? So God said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So Abraham brought all these to him, cut them down the middle, and laid each half opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds. The birds of prey swooped down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. So the Lord is coming down to a human level to establish a covenant with Abraham in human terms that he would understand. Because how did they make a covenant in the Middle East at that time? By exactly what God is telling Abraham to do. So God is coming down, right, to put the covenant in human terms for Abraham. So Abraham understands this is covenant, this is serious, and Abraham understands the terms of it. Verse 12, when the sun was setting, a deep sleep overcame Abram, and a horror of great darkness overcame him. God said to Abram, know for sure that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. That was Egypt. But on that nation whom your descendants will serve, I will bring judgment, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation, your descendants shall return here, just to Canaan, for the wickedness and guilt of the Amorites is not yet complete. Verse 17, when the sun had gone down and a deep darkness had come, there appeared a smoking brazier and a flaming torch which passed between the divided pieces of the animals. On the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. Verse 19, the land of the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaim, the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. Okay, so those are the boundaries of the land the Lord made and said, I'm giving this to Israel. Okay, where are all these places? Well, the Kenizzites inhabited some part of Arabia and Syria. The Hittites were an ancient group of Indo-Europeans who moved into Asia Minor and formed an empire there, which is known as modern Turkey, this area, okay? An empire at Hadusa in Anatolia, which is modern Turkey around 1600 BCE. The Rephaim, the valley of Rephaim is on the west and southwest of Jerusalem. Amorites. They were members of an ancient Semitic-speaking people who dominated the history of Mesopotamia, Syria, and what people call Palestine. So basically, here's the map. So you can see some of it here. You can see, now we're going to talk about Edom in a moment. I want you to look to the bottom there where it says Edom. We're going to talk about that in a moment. The Canaanites were the people who lived in the area known as Southern Levant, which is now recognized as Israel. The Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Lebanon, and parts of Syria. The Girgashites were of Canaan, the fourth listed son of Ham in Genesis 10:6. And it's actually Genesis 10, 15, and 16. And it says, and Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite. Okay, so that's in Genesis, verse 17. And the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite. Okay, so as you can see, the boundaries God created, Israel, it hasn't even realized yet. The land Israel has now is not the boundaries of the covenant that God made with Abraham. It's far larger than that. That stretches into areas of Turkey, Syria, right? Even Jordan and those surrounding areas. So it's much bigger than we think when we talk about covenant and what the Lord did with Israel. That's how big this area is. We're talking that the Lord gave to Israel, because right now Israel lives in a space that is about the size of New Jersey. Now you see Edom at the bottom in pink, Edom, right? That is where Esau, because you had Jacob and Esau, the twins, right? That Rebekah had with Isaac. Isaac was Abraham's son. Esau mingled with the Canaanites, which he wasn't supposed to do, and created a mixed race. It is from that area that the Palestinians descended from. Edom is in Jordan. Jordan is the area where they really came from, because Esau mixed with Canaanite women and created a mixed race of people. And so this is very well documented also, that Esau did this. Esau was very rebellious, and he gave up his birthright for a pot of stew. He sold his birthright to his brother Jacob, or Yaakov, for a pot of stew. Now, Genesis 17, verses 1 through 22. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk habitually before me and be blameless and complete. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly through your descendants. Then Abram fell on his face in worship, and God spoke with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, which means exalted father, but your name shall be Abraham, which means father of a multitude. For I will make you the father of many nations. Verse 6, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. It means there is no end. It's an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Further, God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep and faithfully obey the terms of my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep and faithfully obey between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be the sign of the covenant between me and you. This is why David said, Who is this uncircumcised Philistine who defies the armies of the living God? What David was saying is, who is this out of covenant blasphemer? That's the modern day translation of that. Who is this out of covenant blasphemer that he would defy the armies of the living God who are in covenant with Almighty God? Okay, verse 12. Every male among you who is 8 days old shall be circumcised throughout your generations. Why was it 8 days old? Because the vitamin K levels, vitamin K helps blood clot. The vitamin K levels would be at a high level enough on the 8th day for the baby boy to be circumcised, and be able to clot. So this is one of the reasons why it was on the 8th day that circumcision took place. Okay. It shall be circumcised throughout your generations, including a servant, whether born in the house or one who is purchased with your money from any foreigner who is not of your descendants. A servant who is born in your house or one who is purchased with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Verse 15, then God said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, which means my princess, but her name will be Sarah, which is princess. I will bless her, and indeed I will also give you a son by her. Yes, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 99 years old, or who is 90 years old, bear a child? They were 10 years apart. And Abraham said to God, Oh, that Ishmael. Remember, Abraham's thinking in his flesh right now. He's not understanding yet what God is saying. Oh, Ishmael might live before you. Remember, he had Ishmael with Hagar, right? That was a no-no, right? This is the first love triangle that could have gone on Jerry Springer. What happened here between Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. So he has Ishmael. I believe Hagar is either Egyptian or she's in that zip code. She's in that type of area. So Ishmael is half Jewish, right? And half Arab, basically, or half Egyptian. So Abraham is looking at Ishmael. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. But God said, no. Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son indeed, and you shall name him Isaac, which means laughter. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard and listened to you. Behold, I will bless him, and will make him fruitful, and will greatly multiply him through his descendants. So he'll greatly bless him and make him fruitful, but there's no covenant. He will be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant, my promise, I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. And God finished speaking with him and went up from Abraham. Okay, so that's the whole exchange. Now, Ishmael, Abraham's son that he had with Hagar. The name Islam is in Ishmael. So if you look at Ishmael, the word Islam is in the name Ishmael. So if you're ever wondering where that came from, where the roots of that began, it was Ishmael. It was this divide of what happened when Abraham took his servant because Sarah pushed him to, because she was insecure that she hadn't given him a child, and he had a child with a woman he never should have had a child with. And Ishmael came from that. And so the Lord never made covenant with Ishmael. He told Abraham for his sake, he would make him a great, he would be the father of 12 princes. He would make him into a great nation, but he would not make his covenant, his promise, his solemn pledge with him. Okay. So the Lord makes the covenant with Isaac. He makes the covenant with that line where David is going to come from, okay? Where ultimately Jesus, Yahushua HaMashiach, comes from, okay? Now, that we have this established scripturally, let's go to Psalm 83. Psalm 83 has been talked about quite a bit right now with what's going on, and I just want you to hear what this psalm says. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace or be still, O God. For behold, your enemies are in a tumult, and those who hate you have raised their heads. They concoct crafty schemes against your people and conspire together against your hidden and precious ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation. That's genocide. Who has been doing that? Hamas, Iran. Let's completely wipe Israel out as a nation. Let's destroy their people. Come, let us wipe them out as a nation. You know who did this too? Haman, who came from the line of the Amalekites. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. We're going to blot their memory out, right? This is what the psalm says. For they have conspired together with one mind against you. They make a covenant. Now, this is important. They have conspired together with one mind. So they're in one accord, okay? The individuals who come together here, the nations come together here, are in one accord. And against you, meaning against you, Lord, they make a covenant. So they're coming together and then taking it a step further and making it a covenant against God and his covenant. So they're making a corrupted covenant to try to counteract the everlasting covenant of God. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites. Okay, the tents of Edom. Edom was in Jordan. Edom is where Esau dwelled, married Canaanite women, and created a race where the Palestinians ultimately came from. Okay, and the Ishmaelites that descended from Ishmael. The name Islam is in Ishmael. The Ishmaelites of Moab, so the Moabites, and the Hagrites. Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, there's Amalek. Philistia, Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined them. They have helped the children of Lot, who are the Ammonites and the Moabites, and have been an arm to them, an arm of strength to them. Deal with them as you did with Midian, as with Sisera and Jabin at the brook of Kishon. Now, Midian was the book of Judges. The Midianites came for 7 years and oppressed Israel, stole their barley, stole their supplies, came in hundreds of thousands every year for 7 years and oppressed them. And the Lord raised up a judge named Gideon and raised up 300 men with Gideon to go and fight an army of 147,000 Midianites and Amalekites. And because of the hand of God, they defeated them. And Israel received their freedom. And what did Gideon do? He went and he tore down the high place. He tore down the altar to Baal. Tore it down. Built an altar to God, made a sacrifice, claimed that land for the Lord, right? This is what happens. Sisera, I think Sisera somehow has to do with Joshua and him telling the sun to stand still so he can fight the battle. So it's something to do with that. I'll go look it up, but I think it's something to do with that. Now, verse 10. who were destroyed at Endor. So deal with them as you did Midian with Sisera and Jabin at the brook of Kishon, who were destroyed at Endor. Endor was a Canaanite city that Joshua failed to dispossess. It was also where the witch of Endor was, that Saul went to when the Lord forsook him, because he had been chasing David for 8 years trying to kill him because he wanted to keep his seat and he didn't want David to take the throne. And he goes to the witch of Endor, who calls up a familiar spirit that calls himself Samuel, and then breaks bread and has a meal with Saul and solidifies that ceremony, and Saul dies the next day. This is the same Endor, okay? Who became like dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb. Oreb and Zeb, I believe, were two individuals that Gideon pursued. They were leaders of the Midianites, if I'm not mistaken. And all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us possess for ourselves the pastures of God. Let us possess for ourselves God's pasture, God's land, God's covenant. Let's go take it for ourselves. Verse 13, oh my God, make them like whirling dust, like chaff before the wind. Like fire consumes the forest, and like the flame sets the mountains on fire. Verse 15. So pursue them with your tempest, your storm, and terrify them with the violence of your storm. Fill their faces with shame and disgrace, that they may persistently seek your name, O Lord. Let them be ashamed and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be humiliated and perish. Verse 18, that they may know that you alone, whose name is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. Now, in Psalm 83, you've got Edom, Ishmael, Amalek, Moab, Ammon, Philistia, Tyre, and Assyria, which are all among the major players in the Middle East today. These are the people from whom jihadists and fundamentalists hail, making up what is known as the Muslim world, as part of the Arab world. Today, these people inhabit the nations of Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, Libya, Sudan, Morocco, and Tunisia. So, who's being spoken about in Psalm 83 inhabit all those different lands? Okay? So, in Psalm 83 lists a group of people, a confederacy, whose main enemy is Israel. This confederacy, in this time, has been broken up a bit by the signing of the Abraham Accords. Okay? So, this confederacy, what we're seeing now is the appetizer to Psalm 83. It's the appetizer to it. And this confederacy has been broken up a bit by the signing of these Abraham Accords that happened when Donald Trump served his 45th term, 45. However, Isaac and Ishmael only come together for a time for peace. Only for a time. And then they oppose each other. Now, knowing all of this, let's go to the New York Times article. What we know about Iran's attack on Israel and what happens next. Israel is deciding how to respond to an attack by Tehran in which it fired hundreds of drones and missiles. Its allies are urging restraint. World leaders are urging Israel to act with restraint after Iran launched a large aerial attack over the weekend, firing at least 300 drones and missiles. Israel's war cabinet has not yet said how it will respond to the first such direct assault launched from Iranian territory after decades of shadow warfare between two countries through proxies. Now, you had drones, you had cruise missiles, you had ballistic missiles, okay? Drones take about 8 to 10 hours to reach Israel from Iran. Ballistic missiles take about 2 to 3 hours. Cruise missiles take minutes to reach Israel. All three were used and launched from Iranian territory. And real time, I'm talking to Dubi and Aviv as this is going on. and praying for them and praying that they would be protected, praying for the protection of Israel through this, because this was a very large onslaught. Now, something Jonah texted me this morning to look into, and I dug a little deeper. So he showed me something, and then I took that and I dug a little deeper, and let me show you what I found. So Iran said 185 drones, 110 ballistic missiles, and 36 cruise missiles, which equals 331. The number 331 in Hebrew gematria means Emmanuel, which means God with us. So the number of missiles that were fired in Hebrew gematria is Emmanuel, God with us. You cannot make this stuff up. This is the part Jonah sent me here. You cannot make this up, that this is the number that they decided to use. Now, Iran did this on the 14th of April, 8 days before Passover. Okay, so remember the number 8. If you add the date together, 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4 for 4, 14, 24, it equals the number 17. Now, this number has been popping up a lot lately, including with CERN and their 17 long mile tunnel that has to do with their Large Hadron Collider. Now, 17, 1 plus 7 equals 8. Okay? So I'm telling you, remember the number 8. If you add the date as 4 plus 14 plus 20 plus 24, you get 62. 6 plus 2 is 8. You have triple eights at play here. 8 days before Passover, and any way you add this date up that they did this, you get the number 8. It was April 8th, the full solar eclipse happened, with the longest totality of over 100 years. The last one, I believe, was 1918. That had the longest totality. It took over 100 years for the length of totality in this eclipse to occur. The totality was 4 minutes and 28 seconds. 4 plus 2 plus 8 equals 14. It was April 14th, 2024 that Iran launched this attack. It was April 14th, 2024, Iran launched this attack. Now, we added April 14th, 2024 up 2 ways, as single numbers and then as 4, 14, 20, and 24. Now, let's look at what the numbers 17 and 62 mean in gematria, because remember, we added the date of April 14, 2024 up as single numbers, 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 2 plus 0, and then we added it up as 4 plus 14 plus 20 plus 24. If we look at what 17 and 62 mean in gematria, 17 represents to burn or be on fire, to cut or gash a troop or band, to deliver, to rush forth, to be destroyed, to slaughter or kill, to boil up with pride. 62 represents to separate or distinguish, bail, to thrust or expel, to strike. These are what these two numbers represent in Hebrew gematria. Now, why is gematria important? Because every letter in Hebrew has a numeric value, and it's important and it holds weight. Now, 6 days after the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, this happens. But what happened the day of that eclipse? NASA fires rockets named after an Egyptian serpent deity named Apep, who embodies darkness and disorder. Fired rockets named after Apep, an Egyptian serpent deity that embodies darkness and disorder. They launched this into the eclipse on April 8th, 2024. 6 days after this, Iran fires over 300 rockets at Israel. 185 of those were armed drones. Also on the same day of these attacks, April 14th, 2024, this happens. This happens here in the U.S. Same day. This happens. This is from MSN. No more time out of Kentucky Derby field after injury. The horse's name is No More Time. No More Time is injured on April 14th and taken out of the Kentucky Derby the same day as these rockets are headed from Iran to Israel. You can't make this stuff up. The horse's name literally is No More Time. You can look this up. Now, we have to go back and look for a minute at what Iran is saying their reason for doing what they did is. Because this consulate in Syria, this Iranian consulate next to the embassy in Syria, Iran was claiming over their propaganda news that Israel blew it up. They're claiming this is the reasoning that they need the nation of Iran to rally together and to do a full-on attack of Israel. Now, I think there's a possibility in this that Iran blew up their own consulate to blame Israel, to give them a reason to do this, because Hamas is not getting the job done the way Iran wants them to get the job done. And yes, I do think this is a very real possibility. Why do I think this is a real possibility? This has the same feel and spirit about it as the Reichstag fires. Now, what were the Reichstag fires? February 27th, 1933 was an arson attack on the Reichstag building, home of the German parliament in Berlin. On Monday, the 27th of February, 1933, precisely 4 weeks after Adolf Hitler was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany, Marinus van der Lubbe, a Dutch council communist, was the alleged culprit. So they're claiming a communist was the culprit of the attack on their parliamentary building. However, Hitler attributed the fire to communist agitators. He used it as a pretext to claim that communists were plotting against the German government and induced President Paul von Hindenburg to issue the Reichstag fire decree, suspending civil liberties and pursue a ruthless confrontation with the communists. This made the fire pivotal in the establishment of Nazi Germany. So it is believed that these Reichstag fires, Hitler purposely had this building attacked. He purposely had this building burnt down, and he did it as an inside job in order to get Germany to agree to pursue a ruthless attack on communists. Okay, so this is done sort of as an inside job, and Hitler uses it then to blame communists, to then get Germany to get behind a ruthless attack of communists that he's calling his enemies. What did Iran do? They, on their propaganda TV, claimed that in an airstrike, Israel blew up their consulate. And they were using this as justification to rally the nation of Iran. And a consulate is sort of like a government building, to rally the nation of Iran to pursue a very strong, direct attack on Israel for what they did. So this has the same feel as the Reichstag fires that happened. Now, the fires happened in 1933. What just happened in 2024. 1933 and 2024 are separated by 91 years. So 1933 and 2024, and I'm doing it again. Yep, 91. 91 years. 91 years. Psalm 91. Psalm 91, verses 1 through 14. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will remain secure and rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will save you from the trap of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you and completely protect you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a wall. You will not be afraid of the terror of night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noon. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but danger will not come near you. You will only look on with your eyes and witness repayment of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil will befall you, nor will any plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels in regard to you to protect and defend and guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you do not even strike your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. What did NASA release? They released those rockets that were named after a serpent. Because he set his love on me, therefore I will save him. I will set him securely on high because he knows my name. And it says he confidently trusts and relies on me, knowing I will never abandon him. No, never. Those are the first 14 verses of Psalm 91. Do I think that's a mistake? No, I don't think that's a mistake at all. So now let's get to Iran and what happened here, because something unexpected happened. So when Iran launches these over 300 drones and rockets headed for Israel, something unexpected happened. Now the Lord has been saying to expect the unexpected, and something unexpected did happen. Why did Arab countries appear to help Israel? Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles at Israel on Saturday night in retaliation for a suspected Israeli attack on its embassy in Damascus at the beginning of April. As the missiles and slow-moving drones were heading toward Israel, Israel's allies stepped in to help. The U.S. and UK Air Forces were involved in shooting down the aerial threats. France may have also been involved in patrolling the area, although it was unclear if the French shot down any projectiles. But what got a lot of attention was the fact that the Jordanian Air Force also stepped in to help. Jordan opened up its airspace to Israeli and U.S. planes and also apparently shot down drones that violated its airspace. According to the Reuters news agency, residents there heard heavy aerial activity and images of remnants of a downed drone in the south of Amman, Jordan's capital, circulated on social media. Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, might have played an indirect role as well, since they host Western air defense systems, surveillance, and refueling aircraft that would have been vital for the effort, noted British publication The Economist. Online, some commentators were quick to celebrate the Arab involvement, saying that it proved Arabs and Israelis could work together and that Israel was not alone in the Middle East. So, this happens. Abraham Accords are put to the test. They're put to the test. They're pressed. And again, in this historic moment, Saudi Arabia and Jordan assisted in the defense of Israel and came together with the US, UK, and France in order to defend Israel against this attack from Iran.